So when we last left off in book 3, Satan had just learned where God's newest creation lived and is making his way towards Earth. And in book 4, we actually jump back immediately into the action and we rejoin Satan as he's making his way towards Earth. However, as Satan flies towards Earth, he sort of begins to consider the reasons for him wanting to fuck up humanity and the reason for why he actually initially decides to rebel against God in the first place. And he knows that what he's told the other demons about him wanting to overthrow God because God is such a tyrant is kind of a lie. And at first he sort of blames God for making him such a powerful angel. And his reasoning for this is that if God hadn't made him so powerful, then the idea of rebellion against God wouldn't have seemed possible to him, and thus he wouldn't have attempted it in the first place. And this also wouldn't have resulted in him failing in his attempt and getting his ass banished into hell. However, after this, Satan, after he gives this reason a bit more thought, he kind of concludes that in his own mind that this is false, and he's just really making this up to place the blame for his actions elsewhere. And Satan kind of acknowledges that if God hadn't, even if God hadn't made him as powerful as he was, if there was another powerful being who wanted to rally Satan to his cause under his banner to fight against God, Satan would have joined that new power regardless. So if it's not the fault on God for making him so powerful that rebellion seemed possible, Satan determines that him getting his ass banished into hell is really his own fault and is caused by his own pride and jealousy. Briefly, he also considers perhaps maybe repenting to God and asking for forgiveness, but then he determines that since he really isn't all that sorry about what he did, and he'd probably do it again if he had the opportunity, there really isn't any point in apologizing and asking for God's forgiveness. So with that, Satan asserts that wherever the fuck he is, he takes hell with him, and from now on, evil will be his good, and thus he renews his determination to destroy humanity in God's eye. Personally, I think that Satan is kind of half right when he says that his rebellion against God is somewhat God's fault, because if you've seen my video on book 3 on Paradise Lost, you should have already known that God in this epic is actually omniscient, meaning he sees all, knows all. So if he already knows that Satan is going to fight him, but then still ends up making Satan anyways, it kind of seems like God was asking for it at that point. Anyways, I guess that humans can't use the same standards we use to judge ourselves to judge God. So this argument is mostly just brushed aside and no one pretends that it exists for the most part. Anyways, as Satan's internal monologue about him placing blame is happening, his face kind of twists with ire and envy. And this is important because Uriel, the sun angel from book 3, ends up seeing Satan's expression, and finally he kind of realizes that something is up, and we'll see more on that later. So after flying for another while, Satan finally arrives at the place where God's newest creations are living, and it's pretty much just a giant garden blocked in by a circular wall, which Satan easily jumps over. So Satan turns into a bunch of different animals as he wanders around the garden in search for the humans, and he also takes note of the tree of knowledge until he finally spots the two humans in existence, Adam and Eve. Now, Satan kind of takes notice of Adam's and Eve's physical appearances and how even though they're both humans, they appear different. And this is because Adam is male and Eve is female. Now, when I first read this, I have zero idea why Eve just suddenly decides to recount her entire life story. No one asks for it, but she does so anyways, and we learn from Eve's own perspective how she was created. So Eve recounts her own creation and how she just pretty much suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the garden. And at first she heads over to the river and gets startled by her own reflection. but then he becomes really fond of it and starts staring at herself. But then some voice tells her that what she's really looking at is her own reflection, and then tells her to seek out Adam. And Eve kind of acknowledges that Adam is indeed kind of different than she was, but then also she decides that she likes her reflection better, so she wants to return to the river. And then Adam has to grab her hand and convince her to stay. And apparently, this is meant to suggest something regarding forced heteronormality or something, but I didn't ask for Eve's life story, so I don't really care what Eve finds sexually attractive. So the two humans leave, and Satan is just so fucking jealous because here the humans are just living a life while he's condemned to hell to suffer eternally, and he still needs a way to ruin them. And he remembers the tree of knowledge, which Adam just so happens to mention that they weren't supposed to eat from. And Satan decides that he'll trick them into eating the fruits from the tree of knowledge, and that'll serve both to ruin these humans and also to get back at God for making him suffer. Now, at the same time, my boy Gabriel is just hanging around guarding the Garden of Eden when Uriel finally drops by. He tells Gabriel about how Satan has tricked him into telling him where the humans live by turning into a cherub. And he also warns Gabriel that he believes that Satan must be planning something, against God's nearest creation. So when night falls, my boy Gabriel, along with some other angels, decides to search through the garden to make sure nothing funny is going on, which leads to one of my favorite parts in the entire epic, where my boy Gabriel just stumbles across Satan, who's turned into a toad and is squatting over Eve, whispering things into her ear. So my boy Gabriel is just like, dude, what in the actual fuck do you think you're fucking doing? And another funny part also follows, because apparently the two other angels accompanying my boy Gabriel just don't seem to know who Satan is, and Satan gets fucking butthurt by this, and then he starts going on and on about, oh, how the fuck can you not know me? I'm so fucking famous. He's like, those Instagram models that have like 1K followers or something. And after my boy Gabriel catches everyone up on who Satan is, Satan just gets his ass yeeted out from the garden, which sends him fleeing. But he'll be back pretty soon to finish what he started. We'll talk more about what happens next in book 5. See you then.